All right, good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Tripod. My name's Alex, and hopefully we'll be able to get Jacob in the stream today as well. Last week it worked quite well. Unfortunately, we won't have text for tonight's best bets, which is a little bit annoying, but they are upgrading the NBN in my area, so I've had an outage for the last 7 days, so I can't use the program on my fucking laptop. You're not going to be able to see the best bets in text form today. But what we're going to do instead is obviously give out the best bets live on the pod tonight. And then straight after the pod, if you hop into the Tripod app, they'll all be posted in there. Or I'll try and post them within 5 minutes of this pod finishing. So if you missed any of the live bets on the live podcast, you can hop in the Tripod app. It's free to download on the App Store and Google Play. Just search Tripod, obviously, and you'll be able to find those bets straight in there after the pod. Jacob, how are you, buddy?
I'll be honest with you, mate. A little under the weather, actually. We said on Sunday that we'd been on a bit of a bender and then had to bookend that with a wedding, and it has caught up with me a tiny bit, but it's probably given me more time indoors and more time to cap the games, and we do see a lot of value in round 6 slate. I guess the good thing about round 6, you've now seen these teams put a little bit of a body of work together, 5 performances by each team. So you start to really know what's real and what's just, a flash in the pan. So at this point, our preseason expectations are overruled mostly by what we've actually seen on the paddocks so far.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes round 1 is really tough, even though we generally have a really good round 1, just because we do, I guess, a lot more work than most bettors do before the season actually starts. But at least 5 weeks gives you a bit of time to know the teams and all that kind of thing. So, let's get stuck in, mate. First up, Thursday night, we got the Sharkies minus 2.5 points hosting the Panthers. 38.5 is the total. I like the Panthers here. I guess put very simply, you could argue that these teams are pretty equal. You could also argue that the Panthers are the slightly better team, given all of the Sharks' injuries that have been, well documented. I know that Gallen comes back, but you're still missing a bunch of guys from that roster that were meant to start the season. The Panthers are not in dire straits, I guess, but after losing last week against the Titans, they are getting pretty desperate for a team that had top 4 aspirations and premiership aspirations to start the season. So I look at this game, I say Panthers are slightly better than the Sharks. I say that the Sharks' home field against another Sydney team is probably worth 1.5 points, 2 points at the very max, and we're getting over the key number of 2. I think we have to take the Panthers here.
Yeah, like the Sharks have got a few guys back on deck, your Dugans and Johnson and Gallen, but you just can see that they're not 100% as well. So you have to factor that in. And of course, the Panthers, probably, you could argue that of all the sides, they're yet to actually put in a good 80-minute performance this season. I know they got a close win against Newcastle. Newcastle's only won 1 game this year. And kind of, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, undeserved, very lucky win over the Tigers. That's all they've got to show for their season so far. So this is a huge game for them. They consider themselves a top 4 side. Only shuffle is Tim Grant actually all the way into the run-on side, and they're going to move RCG to the bench, which could give them a bit of extra punch on the bench. And I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but a guy like Tim Grant, people might forget, played for New South Wales in his early 20s. So I think he still has some talent there. So overall, this Panthers side is still decent, and I think people will write off the Panthers because they lost to the Titans, and everyone assumed the Titans are shit. But the truth is, the Titans have had a lot of reasons why they haven't played their best so far this year. Friday night was their best game. And although the Panthers' defense simply wasn't good enough, you have to give some credit to the Titans for that one. So I think they'll get up for this one. And look, we've also got the slightly, better goal kicker. I like the edge that they've had since Kickout's been back in this team. So I agree that we probably got to look towards the Panthers and the points in this one.
Yes, definitely. And we're taking 3 best bets on this one for this game on the live pod. First up, we're taking Panthers to score over 2.5 tries. That one is $1.87 on Sportsbet. Then next up, we're taking the Panthers team total over 16.5 points. That one is $2, so plus money, also on Sportsbet. And the third one we're taking is the Panthers team total over 6.5 points in the first half. That one's also plus money, $2 on Unibet. So 2 out of the first 3 best bets at over $1.90, which is good.
Very juicy.
Keeps the average up there. Next up, we got the Doggies hosting the Rabbits. The Doggies are 9.5-point underdogs, and the total is 40.5 points. Really disappointing effort by the Dogs last week, as we all kind of saw. They got blown out of the park, but we kind of expected that. We were on the Dragons last week. We said it was a really tough spot for the Dogs, being an underdog in your third straight road game. Now they get to come back home. First time they've played home in a month. I think they're going to be absolutely stoked for this one. Rabbits, on the other hand, we know the Rabbits, they are a good team. But I will tell you this, we were at the Warriors-Rabbits game at the Sunny Coast last week. They shouldn't have won that game. They're down 12 points with 20 minutes left. They got lucky in that one. And let me tell you, if the Rabbits ended up losing that one, I think we probably see a different line here. Look, the Bulldogs aren't my favourite play of the round, but they aren't over 11 points worse than the Rabbits. They're at home. They're catching a shitload of points. I understand that the Rabbits are a better team than the Dogs. No one's going to argue with me there. But this is just too many points for a Dogs team that should be desperate and in a bounce-back spot at home for the first time. I expect full effort from a Dogs team. I think they can keep it close.
And since it is the Easter Bunnies playing on Good Friday, let's just give a shout-out to Greg Inglis. That news came through this week that he will take no further part in this season or any more NRL games. He's retired, and it's, he didn't really pinpoint the reasons, but I think there's multiple things going on with his body. Basically, he felt he couldn't perform the way he wants to. And I'm glad that he made that call rather than, going out as a shell of himself. Look, the guy's had an absolutely ridiculous career, and I don't think people realise, how dominant he was for a period of time there before he got a couple of knee injuries, where when he was playing fullback at the Bunnies, it was honestly it was dangerous to kick the ball to him. He could create something every time he touched the ball, dominated in multiple positions, multiple clubs, and won just about everything you can win. Even once he got the knee injuries and got slowed down, just how powerful he was still able to dominate the competition. So farewell to GI. But that, of course, although he wasn't there last week, we've spoken about before that the Rabbitohs are a little bit depleted in the outside backs. They lost Braden Burns a couple weeks before. And yes, they were lucky in the sense that the Warriors let that one get away last week, but they did show a lot of resolve and confidence in themselves, because you could have probably given up at some point late in that game, but they hung tough and they got a confidence boosting win. Look, the Dogs were shocking on Sunday, but the Dragons were massively up for that game. Suasa Sue's suspended, but they can bring back in Danny Fualu, who got dropped earlier in the season, so he should be hungry. And look, the Bulldogs, are a side that isn't going to play a lot of meaningful games this year, but I feel like this is one of them on Easter Friday or Good Friday afternoon, and I think that they can keep it close.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get to the best bet on this one, I see a couple of comments flowing through about the graphics. Obviously, if you joined us late, we can't have the best bets on the board today or on the screen today because they are doing NBN repairs in my area, so I can't use the laptop, so we don't have the program. But next time up, we will have that. And someone was asking about Panthers tries market. It's on Sportsbet. It's $1.87. Panthers over 2.5 tries. We do have one best bet on the Bulldogs game so far. We probably will have more tomorrow in the Tripod app, so keep an eye out for that. They're usually released around lunchtime. But we're going to take the Bulldogs plus 1.5 tries. That one is $1.95 on Bet365. So another juicy odds bet there. Next up, we'll move to the Storm at Pickham against the Roosters. 34.5 is the total, which is the lowest total of the week. But I guess it is expected. I guess generally we say, when you get two teams with a lot to play for, which these guys do, they're vying obviously for top of the ladder, even though it's very, very early on in the season. Generally, when you get two very good teams playing in a big game, the total does trend towards the under because the defense steps up. Generally, when you get two teams with absolutely nothing to play for, defense is garbage and the games do trend over. I like the Storm in this one. We've said before that the Storm probably have one of, if not the most, the strongest home field advantage in the NRL. I'd give them about 3 to 3.5 points for home field down there. And they're always playing interstate teams, obviously, so travel is an issue for the opponent. But this game's at Pickham, so what's this telling us? This is telling us that the Roosters are 3 to 3.5 points better than the Storm. I just don't think that's the case. I understand that the Roosters have been playing excellent lately, but I think you could argue very easily that these two teams are equal. And that's what I think, I guess, in my opinion, that these two teams are pretty equal. You get Vunivalu back because Sandor Earl was an absolute disaster last week. And I think Vunivalu, most wingers, aren't worth more than half a point. I think Vunivalu, you can argue, is worth half a point over replacement there. So you've got a Storm team that's playing well. They're undefeated. I understand that it's, generally taking a Storm side is the square side, but I don't necessarily think that's the case here. Just because the Roosters have been on fire lately, I think the average Joe punter wants to bet on the Roosters at this stage. But I think this line should not be pick 'em. I think the Storm of value here.
I agree. It's obviously a grand final rematch, and we were on the Roosters in the grand final, but that was played in Sydney for one. And you got to say there's be some revenge for the Storm in this one, although I think both teams will be bang up for it, and they have played a lot of cracking games against each other. I expect this to be no different. And most people saying this is a grand final preview of 2019 as well. And it's hard to argue. I mean, absolutely. Roosters only lost in round one and the Storm haven't lost this year. But I don't think the Storm come in complacent either. When you look at the last two performances, they played the Dogs and the Cowboys, and they had to scrape through in both. And those are, lowly sides that they, were not comprehensive against. So they know they have to be a lot better if they're going to win this one. In terms of key personnel, I suppose the Storm probably just short Curtis Scott, who's in the reserves. There's even a chance he could take the field, and they'd probably have their strongest 17. But the Roosters, of course, still without Jake Friend, but Victor the Inflictor's been doing a good job there at 9. And, there's probably no more deadly 3 backline players than Keary, Latrell and Teddy, and they're all in just ridiculous touch. So it's scary betting against the Roosters, but I'm happy enough to do it in this one. As you say, I feel like the Storm can match it with the Roosters across the park, and you do get little advantages there in that they're playing at home. I feel like they can dominate the wrestle and just test the limits of what the referees will allow in a tight match. And even goal kicking, you'd have to say Cameron Smith a little bit better than Latrell. So these tiny edges, it's enough for me to probably believe the Storm wins this game. So we'll be looking for best bets on the Storm if we can.
We will be. And the thing is, we don't have any best bets on the Storm at the moment. It's kind of one of those ones where it's in that grey area. Obviously, the game is pick 'em. So we're going to wait and see what the line does overnight before we release some bets on the Storm tomorrow. Obviously, if the Storm creep into slight underdogs, we'll be able to catch bets like plus a half a point, first half, second half, that sort of thing. But we're going to wait on the Storm bets for now. But we will have some Storm bets tomorrow, I would say. Next up, the Warriors laying 7.5 points hosting the Cowboys. 39.5 is the total. I guess personnel-wise, at least you get Blake Green back, who was a surprise, omission just before the game last week. And the big news for the Cowboys is obviously Nene McDonald is out, their beastly winger. But the thing is here, I was very, very surprised when I saw this line. I was kind of like you, Jacob. I know we talked a couple of hours ago. But when I saw this game come out, I really did think that the Warriors would be like 4-point favourites. I understand that they are slightly better than the Cowboys with, Taumalolo out and just the way that the Cowboys have been playing. But they're not 5.5 points better than the Cowboys. They're just not. I know that the Cowboys have been disappointing, but they put in a good effort last week against the Storm. They only lost by 6 points. And the Warriors, they are solid. I mean, we were all over them last week against the Rabbits. They're back home now. They should put in a good performance, but it's just too many points for me. For a desperate Cows team, I understand that the Warriors should be quite desperate as well. But I think this line should be far closer to 4.5 points. So it just seems a bit too high for me. And like we kind of say every week, it's like, you play numbers, not teams. And if this line was 3.5, we'd probably take the Warriors. But the line's 7.5, so I think we have to take the Cows.
Yeah, I feel like this is actually quietly a really massive game for two teams that, want to be knocking on the door of the top 8. And in round 6, and the Cowboys have 1 win on the board, the Warriors just 2, and the Warriors, are favourites in this one. They both feel like they've really got to win this one if they believe they can kind of charge up the ladder. And they're both coming off tough losses. Although I feel like the Warriors game, the one where that's tough to get over because they had it won. Whereas the Cowboys, while they'll feel a bit, like a bit let down that they didn't get over the line against the Storm, they never quite had them beaten. But they, of course, lost Nene McDonald, you touched on there. Now, that is a grim matchup, and does have me scared if we take the Cowboys. So you got Tamari Martin at fullback, a makeshift fullback, against RTS, who we touched on in the recap, is as good as any human on the planet at just evading being tackled and just creating a spark. He's fucking phenomenal. So that matchup is scary. And then the wingers, you've got O'Neill and Hampton, who are both makeshift wingers, against Fusatua and Mamalo. So I feel like that could
That's
definitely
worrying.
be an issue at some points in this game, and especially if the Cowboys have to chase points, that's tough with that back three alone, and even their back five is very weak. But as I said, like kind of season on the line, and look, yeah, at least the effort was there for the Cowboys against the Storm. They get back Bolton into their pack, so at least their pack can get a little stronger. I would say one positive for the Warriors, if there could be a positive from last week, with Blake Green, being ruled out in the warm-up, it all fell on, Harris Tavita there in the halves, and he actually stepped up and had a really good game. I know RTS takes a bit of pressure off, but that could be a positive for him going forwards now with Blake Green back in the team. I feel like the Warriors should be too good and should win this one, but I thought this line would come out about 4.5 and 5.5, and it's 7.5. We're leaning to the Cowboys. We're probably even looking to see if it gets over 8, where we've got to take the Cowboys.
Yeah, 100%. Funny comment, Zach. I know that your favourite player last year, Solomon Akata, someone said, just put the first try on whoever's he's defending. Do you agree?
He can get a bath in defence, but I would say, I don't know, well, hopefully the Cowboys outside backs put on a couple of tries this week, because we've got a couple of overs bets on them.
Hopefully. We have 2 bets at this point. First up, we're taking the Cowboys team total over 15.5 points. That one is $1.83 on Ladbrokes and on Neds. And secondly, we're going to take the Cowboys to score over 2.5 tries. That one is $1.86 on Sportsbet. Next up, the Dragons hosting Manly. Dragons are 6.5 point favourites. Total is 39.5. I guess it's funny. I guess you could say these are the two form teams of the comp. They've both won 3 straight after losing their first couple, which I guess you wouldn't have expected from Manly, especially after losing Turbo. But they have played well. They've been defending well. Obviously got that win over the Rabbits. Won last week against the Knights, who didn't play that well. But I mean, Manly stepped up. Thing is here, I guess you can't forget that Manly are still missing their best player in Tommy Turbo. But at the same token, you can't ignore that they have been playing some very, very good footy. So has St. George Illawarra. The thing is, I don't know how far away these teams really are from each other. I mean, I understand that St. George is definitely better than Manly, but how much better they are and how much better they've been playing currently, I'm not that sure. I don't think the gap is that wide. Now, you're talking about, a New South Wales team playing a New South Wales team. We always kind of say that home field, when that happens, when there's not that much travel involved, gets reduced. I mean, generally, a home field advantage is 2.5 points, but for 2 Sydney teams playing each other, I think you make the argument that it's 1 point. So what's this line telling us? It's telling us that the Dragons are 5.5 points better than Manly. I don't think you can make that argument. I think it's a lot closer than that. I think Manly puts in a good effort here. St. George is the better team, but I think once again, 6.5 points is probably too many points.
Yeah, both sides also get to come into the game unchanged, no injuries, and you wouldn't change a winning formula. They're both on 3-game winning streaks, right? So,
yes.
And we spoke about on Sunday night that, the Des effect, there is improvement every week in Manly. And look, in terms of their outside 5 backs, honestly, if you look at, 1 to 5 for Manly, these blokes could all easily be playing reserve grade. So that is a key weakness for Manly when Tommy Turbo isn't there. And, I've said before, Dylan Walker was supposed to be in this side. He's not there either. But the outside backs aren't really the strength of the Dragons either. So whether they can massively exploit that. And look, the battle of the forwards is going to be really cool to watch here. The middle forwards, like Adam Fanua-Blake having a career year, Marty Tapau's a beast, and Jake Trbojevic there. That's as formidable 3 middle forwards as you have on any side. But the Dragons pack is a different animal when Frizzell is back as well. You've seen just what he's done since he's come back into this team. And with the spines, I'd say they're pretty evenly matched. Cherry's been playing really well. But Benny Hunt probably had his best game just about in a Dragons jersey last week too. Something interesting I've noticed, like this Fayunu comes off the bench, plays hooker for Manly, seems to play better than Coruscant. And I feel like Coruscant could probably do a job in the halves, and they could drop LG and then get both in the team and improve the side that way. But I guess you don't change a winning formula. This game, the Dragons-Manly, it's a bit similar to the handicap on Warriors-Cowboys. We have the better team at home. They probably win, but the line is above 6, and we don't feel it should be that high. So we actually maybe, grabbing the points with the team we don't necessarily think is going to win. And on the back of Manly's defence, I feel like they can keep it within, a converted try.
Yep, and see a couple of comments flowing through there. Yes, Adam Fanua-Blake is not playing, but I will make this argument. Look, last week, so the line opened 6.5. Dragons were 6.5-point favourites hosting the Doggies. That line closed 4.5. They were 4.5-point favourites at home against the Bulldogs. Now, I can very easily make an argument that Manly is better than the Bulldogs, and we're getting a higher line here. So I say, why not take Manly here? We're taking 3 plays for now. First up, we're taking Manly plus 4 points in the first half. That one is $1.88 on BetEasy. Next up, we're taking Manly to win a half. That is $1.80 also on BetEasy. And we'll take Manly over 2.5 tries. That one is $2.02 on Sportsbet. Next
Keep it
up,
cool there, mate. Seems like the cops might be after you. Sorry, did I?
Yeah, I know, I did hear that.
I thought I read Fanua-Blake's playing. Am I wrong? Have I just completely blanked on that? He got sin bin last week. Was it a suspension that I just forgot to account for?
Someone let us know. Or
maybe, yeah, I don't know if that's news to me or I just forgot it. But I don't like Manly as much without Fanua-Blake, but still, those are rock solid plays.
Either way, 6.5 is too many there, I think. Next up, we've got the Titans laying 2.5 points hosting the Knights. 40.5 is the total. Bit of rain for this one, but it should be clearing a few hours before game time, so it should be a dry enough track there at the Goldie. I've got a slight lean to the Titans in this one. I think that they are, arguably an even, a similar team to what the Knights are. But the thing is, the Knights are absolutely desperate as well. They absolutely laid an egg last week against Manly, lost that one. The Titans now losing streak theory. They lost 4 on the trot. Now they finally get their first win, finally get some chemistry, finally put on some points. So I think it's going to be more of a confidence-boosting win, more of a letdown spot here. I don't think they say, oh, sweet, we've got our first win of the season, let's fucking back off now. So I think we do get a good performance out of the Titans. My one worry is their defense, like I mentioned last week in the recap pod. It just seemed like the Panthers were getting through, just massive holes there in the Titans' defense. I guess I would take Titans if I knew that Ash Taylor is going to be 100%, but it came out, the dude's got an ACL strain. That's usually 1 to 3 weeks, but now it comes out that he's going to be playing. So if he's 100% or not, I'm almost certain he's not going to be 100%. But how close he is to 100%, I don't really know. So, that's a worry for me. Jai Arrow is named, which is huge. It was just a cork, so that's great for this Titans team. So even so, it's just a few too many unknowns, especially with a key player like Ash Taylor, for me to put my money on the Titans at this point.
And Jared Wallace, key forward, he's out as well. Although Shannon Boyd, who was scratched in the warm-up before their game against Penrith, he's back in. So you can say that offsets a bit. But AJ Brimson as well, was it a broken thumb or something like that? He, is a good utility off the bench, and he's not going to take a part in this game either. You spoke about, defensive woes for the Titans. I know that both times these two sides played, the Knights and the Titans last year, were shootouts. Both had 50 or more points in those games. And, speaking of attack, look, obviously Pong at a fullback has been the right option, and they've looked better. But the Knights, haven't won a game since round 1. And the reason that we criticised moving Pong at a fullback so much, it's not like, oh, we'll see how he goes there and we can always move him back and he's so talented, he'll slot back in. But they wasted a whole off-season and a pre-season of integrating Mason Lino. And since they've brought Lino into the 6 jersey, he's been awful. And, he was really impressive for the Warriors last year. So I know he can be better than that. But, that has let them down, their halves play. And they were woeful last week. But I will say it was really just the first 30 minutes to let them down. I think they were down 18-0. And then they got back into the game. They at least made Manly sweat. They played okay second half. But it was a terrible start in an important spot. So, yeah, you've got one side that would have a little confidence after getting a win, and you've got another side that's desperate. And I do think it'll be a pretty even match. So I don't have a strong, lean in either direction, because I kind of expect a good outing by both these sides. And I know they can play better than, their 1-4 record suggests.
Yeah, and at this point, we don't have any plays on the game. We'll deep dive a little bit further tomorrow morning, but at this point, it looks like the bookies have the line pretty much right. And that's kind of what we always say. It's like, the advantage that the bookies have is that they should be giving you $2 lines, but they're giving you $1.90. The advantage that you have is that you don't have to play every game. So That's a key to being selective, and it's why we've kind of won 60% over the last 4 years. Moving on to the Sunday late game, we got the Raiders hosting the Broncos, -3.5 points the Raiders are, and the total is 39.5 points. We're probably going to cop some shit for this, but I like the Broncos here. I think that it's a great spot for them. I know we've said this time and time again, and we said that last week was a great spot for them, and to be honest, they should have polled on 24 points in the first half. I did think that they were the better team for the majority of that game. But yes, I understand the Raiders are very good. I said at the start of the season I was high on the Raiders. I said they're a top 8 side, and they've proven it. They're 4-1. They've played very, very solid footy for all 5 games, and they seem to be fit. They seem to be playing for each other. The thing is here, the Broncos are absolutely desperate. You have them coming off a terrible, embarrassing loss on a Thursday night primetime game. You have 3 extra days of rest than the Raiders. The Raiders played the late game on Sunday, so they get the minimal rest. And people couldn't be higher on the Raiders as they are right now. People couldn't be lower on the Broncos as they are right now. I think this is a pros versus Joes game. And I think that the line has crept to a point where it's almost like you have to play the Broncos. You just have to shut your eyes and do it because the line value is too much there, even though it's an ugly play that most people won't like.
Yeah, I don't really want to play against this Raiders side. You mentioned the 4 out of 5 wins. The one game they lost was really just due to being, I guess, blitzed in the first half against the Storm. And yeah, they've been so competitive. The attitude, the fitness, the discipline is all there this season. They're all things that Brisbane is missing. In addition, Tapane got injured again, so you can say the Raiders come in slightly under strength there. But for the Broncos, they still have Tavita Pangai Jr. injured, and Matt Lodge copped an injury as well last week. Although I will say the shining light for the Broncos in that Tigers loss was probably the play of Payne Haas, who started at lock, played 60 or 70 minutes and was massive for them. And this kid's like 18, 19 years old. Can't wait till they get all the band back together in that forward pack. Then they actually may resemble a finals team. But there still probably is enough to compete in this one. And you're right, like at that plus, I think we found +4.5 on this one. So it is just too many points. I do worry that, the wheels could fall off the rails in this one for Brisbane if, I do hear Seibold kind of making excuses that he's got a lot of young players and that he's on a long contract and he's building towards something. But there is still enough talent. Jimmy the Jet in the reserves, he could come into this side as well. And look, if Seibold's persisting with his halves and his fullback has resisted the urge to make a change, then we'll find out whether that's just stubbornness or belief. Because this is a massive spot for the Broncos, and with 10 days to prepare, I think we do get a big performance out of them, enough to take the points.
Enough to take the points. Can you see comments flowing through, Sakim?
Luckily not.
How often do you think that I say the advantage that the bookies have is that they give us $1.90 odds? How many times?
Over under probably 3.5 times a pod.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah, someone said it was $1.01. All right, maybe I need to stop saying that. Anyway, we've got a couple of plays on the Broncos. We're taking the Broncos +4.5 points. That one is $1.95 on Neds and Ladbrokes. You just have to go into the alternate line section on either of those bookies. You won't get that tomorrow. And next up, we're taking the Raiders to score under 10.5 points in the first half. That's that's $1.80 also on Ladbrokes and on Neds. And then the final game of the round is the Eels laying 1.5 points.
Just before you get into that, I just had a cool idea. We should get we probably repeat ourselves and use the same phrases way too many times, and maybe someone can come up with like a pod drinking game where they can put all of our key phrases, and if we say that, people have to drink or scull or do a shot or whatever, and people could get blind if we say that we're 60% or anything like that.
It's on Wednesdays and Sunday nights, so it's like fuck. These people have to work, I guess. Although maybe they're all punting degenerates that don't work. But anyway, moving on to the Monday game, because we obviously have the Easter long weekend, so we've got a Monday game this week. The Eels are laying 1.5 points against the Tigers. 38.5 is the total. When I looked at this game, I saw the Tigers were +2.5 points this morning. Then the news comes out that the Eels get Fergo back. And I guess that means 1 point for them. I guess it's not a broken nose. I guess he's just broken some cartilage in his nose or something, which I can't even understand. That shit looked absolutely fucked to me. His nose was bent 90-degree angle, and it just had blood pissing out of it last week. So I'm very surprised that he is playing. And if he is playing, he's probably going to be a little bit, I guess, more cautious than he normally would.
But can we just clarify what you said? This morning, the Tigers, you saw them at +2.5.
Yes.
So if there was news that Fergo was playing, that wouldn't make the Eels less of a favourite.
Yes,
we've actually seen the game come to its pick.
Yeah.
So we were speculating, has Fergo been named, but is there news on the street that he's not going to play? We're actually wondering why money has come for the Tigers today.
It is strange. It is strange because, like you said, you're right. My mistake. It was 2.5 this morning. I only checked 365, and now everyone's basically at 1.5. I thought the 2.5 was value for the Tigers, but obviously that's gone now. The thing was, initially, my thoughts were that this is a good spot for the Eels. You've just been absolutely blown up, held to a donut on Monday. So this should be a good bounce back spot for you because it was a really bad loss for them, but it's understandable, I think. They had zero ball. They fucking had 30% possession in the first half, and they were just gassed by the second half. They had nothing left in the tank. Now I've got to think back, all right, Tigers had an upset win over the Broncos, so maybe it's a little bit of a letdown spot for them. But the difference here, I think, is like the 3 days rest, the 3 extra days rest that the Tigers get, and the Eels have a shorter turnaround. I understand it's still, over a week, but it is 3 days less turnaround after a grueling game where you had to do defending for basically that entire game. I think these sides, you could argue, are fairly even. So I do like the Tigers with that 3 extra days rest. And I guess you could maybe even argue the Tigers are a slightly better side at this point.
But let's also factor in what could be kind of a sneaky, massive home field advantage. And I'm not sure. I'm speculating a little bit here. But, of course, this is the opening of the new Bankwest Stadium, which they're saying is just ridiculously good and like a mini Suncorp, and it's like on the legal limit of steepness of the terraces so that the crowd's on top of them, and it's state of the art. And I'm guessing that, I know it's sold out, but I'm guessing that Eels members, being an Eels home game, and Eels fans got first dibs. So it could be really an electric atmosphere for the Eels, and they want to really make that stadium their own. Now, West Tigers also being a Western Sydney team, and actually they're going to play multiple games, designated home games at this stadium too. It could be kind of like a battle to see who owns this stadium. So it could be an advantage to the Eels if they do have a bigger contingent in, a sold-out crowd. You don't usually get sold-out crowds in Sydney, so that would be cool to watch on TV as well. But I also think it's important to remember the Eels are a little undermanned. I've said it, a few weeks in a row about losing Nathan Brown. Because they kept playing well, people just forgot how important he would be. Manu Ma'u, and then Dylan Brown as well, his injury. And if Fergo, is meant to be able to play, but if there's that chance that he's not sweet to go, that would be a huge loss too. Because I feel like the edge to the Tigers, they do have a slightly better forward pack. I think they got the better bench. I would argue even the better spine. Maybe the one position group that wouldn't be stronger would be the outside backs. So I do think like a little bit better team is the West Tigers. And, they defend so well. And 11 days to prepare for this one. And I think they should be up for it on a big occasion. That's why we've grabbed a couple of the best bets. And that's why they may represent the value side.
Yeah, look, and to be fair, it's not our favourite game of the round, but we've found 2 bets that are very, very good that we just couldn't pass up. First up, we'll take the hook with the Tigers. We'll take plus half a point with the Tigers in the first half. That one's $1.90 on BetEasy. And secondly, this one's a great bet. This won't be here tomorrow for sure. We'll take the Eels to score under 3.5 tries. That one is $1.80 on Bet365. That bet is like $1.65 in other places, so make sure you grab that one. And that'll wrap it, guys. That'll do it for Week 6 preview. Obviously, if you missed any of those ones, or if you didn't write them down during the pod, I will post them up straight after this vid gets shut down. So you'll have all of those ones, and then be in the app. Download the free Tripod app, obviously, because we'll be posting in there around lunchtime tomorrow with any other best bets that we do come up with. And we've got 13 so far, but I would assume that we'll probably have some more come tomorrow because we had a few games that we like the Storm, where we didn't quite grab something just yet. Anything else you wanted to add, Jacob, before we head out of here?
No, we do like quite a few games for this round 6, and maybe it's an opportunity for people to watch a couple of extra games than they usually would. We've got, a 4-day weekend, so wish everyone a great Easter weekend, including yourself, because you're heading up north and you're actually going to
Yes,
be absent for the next 2 or 3 pods. So I'll be barbecuing alone.
correct.
But before you go, we'll be putting our heads together, as you said, and getting as much value as you can out of round 6. So yeah, I hope everyone has a great, obviously a great punt on the footy in what should be an exciting round. But also just a great break if you get that opportunity. And thanks, as always, for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, and like Jacob said, I'm away for a couple of weeks, but I'll leave it in the trusty hands of Jacob. I know he's barbecued alone many a time before, and he's done well. So I'll leave it up to him while I'm on holidays. But we'll still deep dive tomorrow. We'll get the best bets out to you around lunchtime. But if you missed any, like I said, hop in the app. They'll be there in about 5 to 10 minutes. But thanks for tuning in, guys, and you'll catch Jacob after the, I guess, late game Monday.
We'll do Easter Monday. Yeah, we'll do an Easter Monday pod.
Easter Monday after the Monday Tigers-Eels game. We'll see you then.